Hello everyone, I'm Yifan. I'm a software engineer on the data infrastructure team at Quora. And today I'm going to talk about Trino at Quora: speed, cost, reliability challenges, and tips. This session is reviewed by my colleague Gabriel Fernandez de Oliveira, and big thanks to him. Okay, before we started, I just want to briefly introduce Quora. Okay, what is Quora? Our mission is to share and grow the world's knowledge, and we do this through a question-answer platform. In this platform, user can share the knowledge by answer the questions and gain the knowledge by reading the answers. Okay, overview. I'm going to cover 5 sections in this talk. How is Trino used at Quora, cost challenges, performance challenges, reliability challenges, and a summary at the end. Okay, let's start with how Trino is used at Quora. Okay, so this is a simple diagram of the Trino's infrastructure we have at Quora. In the center, we have our Trino clusters, and on the left side, we have our offline tables stored in S3 data lake, and most of them are Hive tables. Their metadata, the table's metadata, are stored in Hive metastore as is shown on the top of the diagram. On the left side, we have all our clients that may send queries to Trino. We have Drupal notebooks, our internal job service, Python shell, superset, Airflow, and internal websites. Trino has a lot of use cases at Quora, and here are the main use cases. The first one is one of the biggest ones, which is ETL batch job. It could be hourly, daily, 15-minutely, and they are scheduled by our internal cron job service and Airflow. And most of them are scheduled by Airflow. The second one is ad hoc interactive query. We have data scientists, engineers may send query to Trino anytime throughout the day. The next one is A/B testing data pipeline. This is a really critical pipeline we have at Quora, as most of our product decisions is actually based on the results produced by this pipeline that measures the impact of each product changes. This pipeline is powered by Trino and produce results on a daily basis. And this is also our most resource-intensive use case. The next one, time series dashboard. This is not for monitoring purpose. It's mainly for our internal company metrics. For example, how many answers, questions we have at Quora, or the sites visit, how many people visit Quora, and our revenue, and so on. The last one is backfill. This is mainly backfilling the ETL jobs. So if a data scientist or engineers they added a new ETL job, or they make some changes to the existing ETL job, they may want to backfill some days of data or a couple of years of data. So it could be really heavy, and they can submit a backfill job anytime. Trino maintains many Quora maintains many Trino clusters, and at least one dedicated to each use case. For example, we will have ETL Trino clusters, ad hoc Trino cluster, A/B testing Trino cluster, and so on. Okay, moving to our first challenge, cost challenge. As our usage grew at Quora, so did our infrastructure cost. In order to control the cost, we had to rethink many of the choices we made initially and try out different things to see if that can apply to our use case. Okay, here are the 3 strategies I like to cover to reduce infrastructure costs at Quora. The first one is use Graviton instances. The second one is autoscale our Trino clusters. The third one is optimize ETL Trino query efficiency. Okay, let's start with using Graviton instances. Graviton here means it is a processor released by AWS. It is running on top of the ARM architecture, and it is proved to be more cost efficient than some other instances for some cases. In August 2020, we migrated all our Trino clusters to Graviton EC2 instances. So we were using AMD and Intel-based instances, but now most of our instances are on Graviton. This migration is easy in our case, as we just need to switch to the compatible JDK, and Trino just ran normally. We do have one challenge, which is the instance availability issue. Sometimes we are not able to get some large Graviton instance. So if we hit this issue, we will temporarily switch to use other types of instance, and which means in the same Trino cluster, there might be a small portion of the machines are in the non-Graviton type. But make sure to keep them have the same number of vCPU and the same memory, but they can run in the same cluster. Okay, the second strategy to save cost, autoscale. When we first start to use Trino, we ran a fixed number of machines every day. The problem with this is the cluster does not scale up and down to adapt our uneven load. As you can see, here is a dash of our average CPU utilization, our ETL cluster, without autoscaling in a single day. The y-axis is the CPU utilization percentage, and the x-axis is the UTC time. So as you can see, so it's very clear we have a huge peak here. This is because we have a lot of daily ETL jobs. So after UTC 0, our cluster runs at full capacity for a couple of hours. But in the other period of time, the day we have a lot of idle time, and we're wasting our money. So we started to autoscale our cluster. To be more specific, we use different autoscaling strategy based on different use cases. For example, for our ETL cluster, we scale based on the CPU utilization. If the CPU utilization goes up, we scale up. Otherwise, we scale down. For our ad hoc cluster, we scale up to some number of machines every day during the day, and scale down during the night and weekends. We assume people don't work, but maybe not. For our backfill use case, as I mentioned earlier, user can submit the backfill job anytime, and those jobs could be really heavy, and we don't want it to affect our ad hoc experience. So we will automatically scale up a backfill cluster up when users submit a backfill job and scale down after that. Okay, moving to our most heavy use case, A/B testing. The problem with this one is the workload is very heavy. We have to scale up to a really big cluster in order for this use case to run. And it takes a couple of hours per day. So we have some queries that run for 5-6 hours. So I can see that this is really long. Okay. So the solution here is we only start the cluster after the dependent data is ready and immediately shut it down after all the queries are finished. So here are the dashes for the A/B testing cluster. The upper one is the cluster average CPU, and the bottom one is the number of machines. As you can see, when the number of machines goes up, the CPU utilization keeps at a very high level. The idle time is minimized they have some of them, but so it indicates a better resource utilization. Okay, in addition to save costs from an infrastructure perspective, we also try to optimize ETL query efficiency to save cost from single query. This is one of the simplest optimizations, and we recommend it to all the users we have, which is apply the where clause to the partition keys. So Trino's predicate pushdown can make use of this and push down the condition to a lower level. And we use Hive connectors, and most of our Hive tables is partitioned. And from my experience, people don't use to query the entire table all the time. So it is really important to add appropriate where conditions to the partition keys. And it proves to be really helpful to improve the query efficiency as well as save the resources. So here is a really simple example of adding the partition where condition on the partition key. So on the left side, here is a suboptimal version of this query. So it is trying to select some rows that should fall into these two epoch time. And those rows should fall into the single day, which is the July 22. However, in this case, because we don't have the where condition on the partition key, so Trino wouldn't know only when days of data is required, so it will perform a full table scan. And this is the better version. We have the conditions on the partition key. Oh, I forgot to introduce table A is a Hive table partitioned by the DT column. So in this case, Trino would only scan a single day. However, even if we try to keep this in mind all the time, people will still forget to do this sometimes. To prevent those kind of mistakes, we built a tool to automatically detect ETL query that scan too many partition keys. And we will further contact the query owner to make sure to see if that is intentional or not. If that is not intentional, we need to optimize the query. Another reason for building this tool is to find some queries that accidentally hit the corner cases that predicate the pushdown couldn't handle in the Hive connector. So here is actually a production A/B testing query I found in our pipeline. And this somehow just hit the corner cases. Even if the correct where conditions on the partition keys is specified, Trino can not use it and wouldn't push down this condition. And it will perform a full table scan. So here is the where clause. What does it do? So it is trying to select some rows that should fall into 2022, July 17, 18, and the 23rd. It is not too hard to infer that. However, Trino will still do a full table scan instead of just scanning the 3 required dates. To fix this, we just added another where conditions on the partition keys and used the AND operator to combine this with the rest. This is not the best way, but it helps us to make this query more efficient. Okay, moving to the second challenge we have, performance. Most of the time, Trino performs very well at Quora, and we got a lot of positive feedbacks. But sometimes we still got some feedbacks like this. For example, is Trino slow today? This is a quite heavy query, but it usually takes around 15 minutes, but today it takes almost an hour now. Is Trino slow for the other folks today? I have a query running for close to 2 hours now. Didn't expect it to take this long. And there are some +1 and crying face emoji. So this is a bad news for data infrastructure engineer, as the fluctuation of query runtime will hurt our develop velocity as well as frustrating anyone who's eager for their query results. We don't want to let our data scientist friends down. So we did some investigation. And we figured there is a common symptom among those slow queries reported by users, which is the execution progress skewness. What does it mean? So it means that in the single stage of the query, there might be some tasks that spend much longer time than the others. And they might have the bytes per second much lower than the average. So here is an example. This is a little bit small, but the idea here is the elapsed time for task 2.16 was 40 minutes, but most tasks took 3 minutes, but there was some like 20 minutes as well. Those are also slow queries, slow nodes. And the bytes per second of this task is 17 million, while other tasks have a higher number. This also happened to other queries running at the same period of time as well. The slow tasks always running on the same sets of the nodes, and we call those slow nodes, slow walkers. We also observed some other symptoms of the slow walkers. For example, the below average CPU utilization, below average load, and there are some others, for example, the more app sockets open and the file descriptor opens kind of stuff. And we also observed a fact, which is if a Trino worker runs for a long time, it is more likely to become a slow walker. The running time is not the root cause of the slowness, but since we observe this relationship, so we find an easy solution, which is gracefully restart workers that have been running for a long time. The workers that is being restarted are not necessarily the slow workers. We're doing this to prevent them from being slow, and it turned out to be really effective. After we enable this, we get a lot less that kinds of feedbacks from data scientists. In addition to that, we also built a detector that can alert when a worker nodes with a low CPU or load outlier is found. After that, we will gracefully restart those nodes as well. Okay, that is done. Moving to the last challenge, reliability. I like to share one tip, which is be cautious when overwriting the Trino configurations. So at Quora, we overwrite a lot of different Trino configurations for performance enhancement, as well as for our customized use case. But sometimes they might not be a wise decision. For example, I like to share a recent example of cluster being unhealthy due to overwriting one of the configurations. And I personally think this is really interesting. So there was a day we found our cluster crashed multiple times. And the cluster was halting. It is making very little progress on each query. And here are some symptoms we observed during the incidents. So we observed the run number drivers and worker parallelism drop to 0. And there are some long GC pauses on the coordinator. Connection errors between workers and the coordinators started to show up. We also tried to kill, so we initially thought it is a memory issue caused by some queries. So we tried to kill some queries in the hope of freeing up some resources, but the cluster just cannot recover from the slowness. So what happened? After digging into the heap dump of the coordinator, because it is our coordinator actually ran out of memory, we found the query history used a lot of memory. And particularly, there was one type of query that consumed a lot of memory in the query history, which is the insertion query with a lot of values specified in the SQL. So the query will look like insert some table values and the list of values. And on that day, we have a lot of queries of that type. So we just need to reduce the memory consumption of the query history. And we reduce this query expire age, and the issue solved. Actually, the default value is pretty low, but we have been overwriting it to a higher number for almost 2 years, and it never caused issue until recently. So just to be careful when overwriting any Trino configurations and to avoid any surprise. Okay, monitoring is just essential for keeping our cluster reliable, as well as helping us debugging when anything happened. We built different components to monitor the health of our Trino clusters. For example, we would collect information on every query sent to Trino through event listeners, and we built some monitoring on top of that. In addition to that, we also moved all the query history to the offline Hive tables for the future analysis. The second one is monitor query failure rate. This is an easy one. Just if the failure rate goes up, we got alerts. Periodically send health check queries to Trino clusters. This one is also easy to understand. If the health check queries cannot return results in a certain period of time, we got alerts. The next one is track workers' uptime, alerting if any workers run for over 36 hours. This is related to preventing the slow worker issues. The last one, track Trino's JMX metrics. This is really helpful. We can track something like a GC pulses, the heap memory usage. If the memory usage is too high, we need to pay attention. Okay, summary. Trino has brought to us a lot of advantages. However, at Quora scale, we face different challenges. We face cost, performance, and the reliability challenges. And to overcome the challenges, we did a couple of things. And here is just a quick recap for the content of this session. To overcome the cost challenges, we use Graviton for better cost efficiency. We also applied autoscaling rules to most of our Trino clusters. In addition to that, we optimize ETL query efficiency to save resources in the query level. For the performance challenge, we gracefully restart all the Trino workers in a rolling fashion to prevent the slow worker issues. The last one is reliability challenges. Avoid the misconfiguration and make sure setting up comprehensive monitoring. Okay. Moving to Trino is great. It is easy to operate, easy to config, and it scales very well. And the Trino's usage is continuously expanding at Quora. I guess we will meet more challenges going forward. But we will further speed up, scale up, and strengthen our Trino's infrastructure. Okay, thanks. Oh, that's all I have.
Do we have any questions? Oh, one up there.
Hi, you mentioned you built a tool to detect low-performing queries. What tools or techniques do you use to identify those?
Oh, I forgot to mention. So we are parsing the execution plan of the query that is produced by the explain SQL. So it will have the information of how many partitions this query is actually scanning.
So you look at the cost and then drill down into the explanation, or you get some kind of a matrix that this query is using so many partitions?
Yeah, we just monitor how many partitions this query is using. If it is more than like 40, 60, or most of the time we don't need to query that many partitions.
Any latency differences between using a mixture of instances versus using just Graviton due to network issues? Or network I/O being higher?
External instance, you mean like the mixed instance types?
Yeah, like for a Trino cluster where you're using both Graviton and Intel instances.
I don't observe any difference.
Significant.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Related to slow workers, I wanted to understand like how do you say a worker is slow, and what are some reasons behind that?
So as I mentioned earlier, there are some like symptoms. For example, if you check out the Trino UI, there are some slow tasks, and each task is corresponding to one workers, and those workers might be slow. And other things is like tracking the CPU utilization and the load, and they might be like different than the other workers. There might be like different reasons behind this. For example, the multi-level feedback queue might contribute to this as well, as it might like prioritize the short queries, and the slowness might be like accumulated on the nodes. That's one reason. Another reason could be as we auto-scale our clusters, so sometimes a new nodes added, they have like uneven loads. The new loads is like just fresh and have a very little load. And this uneven load distribution might also cause some slow workers accumulating more slowness over the time.
Thanks, you answered my follow-up question as well.
Okay.
We have a question from online from Dongwu. Do you use on-demand or spot instances or capacity reservation to realize cost savings from autoscaling?
We use on-demand, yeah, but we have some plans with AWS, like you can save some costs, but the model is kind of like on-demand. It's not. We don't use spot instance for Trino.
Hi, I'm for the slow workers and the restarting to improve the performance. Do you have any insight into why the performance degrades over time? One thing that we had was that not. Trino itself wasn't becoming slower over time, but other processes, daemon processes on the node were leaking memory. So I wonder if you had identified that it was exactly Trino that was degrading over time, or could it possibly be something else that's running on the same node as Trino?
We don't run other things on Trino nodes. It's just there are some other things, but not heavy. We try to initially we also thought it might be the memory leak issue, but we haven't figured that out. And also, as I mentioned earlier, there are multiple reasons contributing to the performance degrade. I feel it is not the Trino workers itself become slow, but it is like more slow task is accumulated on that worker. So that's the reason it sounds like the performance degrade. But anyhow, because when worker accumulate a lot of slowness, it will hurt the entire query performance. It will like prevent the query to be finished, and many people might like report there are like slow queries. Okay.